Right, okay, so we're on to our next session. We now have 3 speakers from BSI. We have Craig, Josh, and Andrea. So Craig is an experienced data and digital professional within the areas of artificial intelligence, data innovation, data strategy, data science, data analytics, business intelligence, and data operations. He's a senior management team member in a commercial environment driving teams forward by demonstrating leadership and innovation. An experienced data professional with over 25 years working with data across multiple industry sectors, both in the public and private sectors. And Josh has a broad range of experience across data and analytics, including establishing and growing data science teams. This has included automation projects for large international corporations and rolling out large-scale analytical platforms across the UK government. At BSI, Josh. Josh leads the marketing data science team, who have recently been established to improve client experience and to maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of BSI's marketing activity. Andrea was a machine learning scientist in the Advanced Analytics Department of Generali Insurance, a bioinformatician at the European Institute of Oncology, and a research engineer at the International School for Advanced Studies. Throughout the past few years, Andrea's focus has been on applying state-of-the-art machine learning techniques to solve various problems in different areas of science and technology. Well, this sounds very interesting. On to you.
It does. Thank you for that introduction. I'd forgotten all of those skills that I apparently have. Very good. And Josh, forever known as George. Brilliant. Team, please note. Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming to our session. Appreciate the break from the ice cream queue, which was fairly lengthy, I saw. Although, ice cream, excellent, nice. So, helping to make AI a force for good. If we were brave, we might have just sneaked in a new slide into our presentation, because I was reading during the break that apparently the G7 calls for adoption of international technical standards for AI. Brilliant. So that's a good set of visibility and importance to hopefully our presentation and this notion of making AI a force for good. So we're deliberately lined up in the Craig, George, and Andrea order because BSI is fairly unique, I think. I've been in the industry a good few years now, as Karen alluded to, and as the hairline suggests. And I can honestly say I have never known a time when there's been such a demand, such a level of interest in kind of the work that we have been doing for many years now. But all of a sudden it's like, Craig, team, ChatGPT, oh my God, please help us. So we will cover off kind of those topics and how you deal with those. But we've each got different remits at BSI, and that's because BSI is a global organization covering many, many different territories and regions and industries, and lots of different remits. I fortunately come from an innovation team remit, so I've got the remit to experiment with data science and AI. Josh has got a marketing data science angle to the work that he does. And Andrea has got the regulatory aspect of BSI. So we'll kind of aim to tell a story through the next 40 minutes or so in terms of the work that we're actually doing in each of those areas. But firstly, hands up people that know about the British Standards Institution. Well, that's pretty good. That's not bad. Okay. So I can just refer to BSI throughout the whole presentation. Now we're all good. Okay. So I joined the organisation about 18 months ago. For me, BSI was standards. It was the kite mark that you'd see on products with a BS number or an ISO number, and I associated that with, well, if it's got the kite mark, that means it's good. It's of good quality, and indeed that is part of BSI's remit, but it is so much more when you're in the organisation. We are privileged to have the Royal Charter. It's a 100-year-old organisation, and that Royal Charter means something very important to the organisation in terms of we're a profit-for-purpose organisation. The work that we do has a public good to it, hence the idea of BSI being in a really strong position to be able to say AI as a force for good. Our Our purpose statement is inspiring trust for a more resilient world, and we've got a real focus at the moment across the organisation on sustainability. And we can draw on a community of experts around the world, 12,000 plus people, not just employed by BSI, but kind of the community that forms the organisation and international standards. BSI is the UK national standards body. So, a really bright, wide and ranging portfolio of services. But what actually is it that we do as a team, and why are we saying that BSI can demonstrate AI as a force for good? So I'll talk to you for about 10 minutes or so now. Got several use cases of how we in the innovation team are taking that expertise in the business that's been there so long now, that human expertise, and kind of blending that, codifying that into using technology, AI, and data science techniques. And our force for good example number one is one of the roles that BSI's got is a notified body for medical devices in particular. So that means that if there is a failure of a medical device being used by consumers around the globe, that BSI has the job of recording that data surrounding that incident. It's been doing that for a long time. It's capturing the data. But we, as an innovation team, data science team, were approached to say, we're capturing all this data, and yes, we're doing some reports, but wouldn't it be good if we could kind of provide some foresight, some predictions, look at trends and patterns as those incident data are coming in real time, and use that data to identify potential harms, that there's something going wrong in this data relating to this device, and we can pick it up earlier to prevent future patient harm as a result of that device failure. And that's what we've done in this particular example. We capture the data as a lot of text. There is a lot of text at BSI, so we're getting pretty smart at using natural language processing. And we take that unstructured text, and we've started to create some root cause analysis of that unstructured data. And then we're providing some benchmarks, some insights, and then very importantly, we're doing some clever stats. Brains in the team that are on the row there, bigger brains than me, kind of applying stats and algorithms across that data to then kind of say, well, this device being used in this way, that doesn't look right. It exceeds the expected risk level that we would expect for that device. So let's do something about it before the problem gets even larger. Next example, drone plus computer vision can provide some really interesting use cases. One in terms of the role of health and safety in particular. And one use case that we've tested out computer vision on is the outside of buildings. We have to do inspections about those buildings and identify when there is potentially something going wrong. Doesn't look quite right. Traditional method is that you get an engineer, you put some scaffolding on the outside of the building, and then you hoist the engineer up that building or drop them down the building, and they're kind of looking at it. Bit risky, do a great job, but of course there's kind of limitations to how many buildings you can inspect when you're doing that kind of process. So what we've tested out here is what we're ultimately going to test out is flying of a drone when we can in a built-up area. Our use case was actually in the state of New York, which have got some regulation coming in that buildings over 6 floors have to be inspected every 12 months or so. Impossible for the current fleet of engineering to do it, so let's try and get some technology to do it. Taken out of the box computer vision model that really, I mean, it doesn't really know about kind of looking for cracks and on the outside of buildings. Can do a pretty good job, but then you have to train it and train it and train it some more. There's a lot of manual kind of data labeling that has to go on. But ultimately, we ended up with some pretty good results. And the red boxes are the computer vision predictions, and you can see kind of it actually identifies areas that the human eye had not picked up. And Shishma, who's with us here at the event, should be on the stand if you want to find out kind of more about these kind of use cases. Another example is voice AI. We've pretty much tested now all the kind of main tenets of AI, and voice AI is kind of the latest one. So the force for good use case here is we provide an audit. BSI provides an auditing service in the regulated industry of debt counselling. You've got customers in a pretty vulnerable state, where they need some help and support to recover from that debt situation. And the conversations that happen between client and the provider of that counselling, they are regulated. And the messages have to be portrayed and given to the customers in a certain structured way. And that is an audited service. The current way that it's done is by a BSI lead auditor with headphones and microphone on, pretty much like I've got now, and listening to that call. And obviously, again, kind of you hit upon the human limitations of how many calls can you listen to in a day, because you have to listen to the whole thing. And then kind of how do you capture everything, because, phone might go off, cat might come in front of the camera, etc., that distracts you from what's actually going on. So we're testing out some voice technology in that process. Voice to text, text to NLP, build it into the model, give the model the audit checklist so it knows what it's supposed to be looking for, and kind of automate that whole process. Okay, next one, I'll stop talking for a couple of minutes and you can watch a video of a force for good in action. It's called Aid Trust. It's a partnership between BSI and a company called Trace Labs. But the goal of Aid Trust, it's all about donated medicines. And donated medicines make sure that they reach their intended recipient, often in developing, deprived countries and areas. There is a risk that on that very complex supply chain, from donor giving medicine to where it's supposed to go, then it might not reach its destination for various reasons. So we built this product called Aid Trust, and Aid Trust kind of combines a distributed knowledge graph, a piece of data visualization, and good old blockchain kind of tracking the whole thing through. So it's a whole combination of technology. But I'll play the video for you for a couple of minutes.
How can you be sure donated medicines and vaccines reach the intended beneficiaries? The traceability and transparency in distribution of medicines and vaccines has never been more important or more challenging. Supply chains are complex, often lacking in standardization of management controls, and the distribution challenges of scalability, quality, and security are increasing. Poorly managed inventory and distribution subcontractors can lead to suspicious loss, diversion, damage, and waste of medicines and vaccines. And finally, the inability to understand if the medicine reached the intended patient. Access to medicines programs sponsored by pharmaceutical companies and NGOs often have ineffective, poorly managed systems for controlling, tracking, and monitoring their product stock inventory throughout the distribution chain, and for monitoring the risk mitigation measures that their subcontracted logistics partners deploy. Bring visibility and trust to the distribution of donated medicines. Introducing Aid Trust, brought to you by BSI and Trace Labs. Combining BSI's knowledge of management systems, global footprint, and expertise in supply chain risk management with the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph developed by Trace Labs, Aid Trust enables visibility, risk flags, and real-time decision-making while maintaining data integrity, security, and privacy on all donations at all stages in the supply chain. The goal of Aid Trust is to ensure the donor organizations are able to evidence that donated medicines did indeed reach the intended patients, even in complex environments. Aid Trust functionality includes data interoperability platform, capturing, linking, and organizing shipping and product data from different sources. Configurable engagement tool for capturing key supply chain events via mobile technology. configurable dashboards providing end-to-end visibility metrics and KPIs, including utilization, diversion, and inventory, amongst others. Audit and compliance of all supply chain actors and nodes against standards-based best practice. Effective supply chains for donated medicines and vaccines need to be based on trust and actionable data. If your organization needs to know where, when, and how donations are being distributed and utilized, contact us to find out more about Aid Trust.
Okay, so I think that plays really nicely to kind of this idea of the BSI and the trust that it brings to using these types of technologies. So finally, for my section, I had to mention ChatGPT, didn't I? So we are diving into exploring the ChatGPT model. We are using our FFG, our Force for Good use case here, is a standards discovery. So standards, they are really useful. They are really useful. But the problem is that they're kind of also really hard to find. And then once you've found the standard, there might be multiple standards, and you kind of think, well, which one shall I go for? 42001, 42001A, 42001 2015? Who knows? And then which clause shall I use? Don't know. So it's really hard. So we're working now to make those standards more easily found and understood, and then this idea of creating them being data that you don't have to kind of download a PDF and read it or copy paste, that we will create that into data that you can then use in your systems. The example there was if you happen to be building a coffee machine, and as you do, and you want to find the standards that you need to make that coffee machine compliant and get your kite mark, there's a standard for that, and we're using some ChatGPT on that discoverability for it. But a segue into Andrea's piece, there's going to be standards relating to AI as well. Plenty of those coming through. So ChatGPT makes standards more discoverable, could kind of revolutionize how we make that information available to you all. So I will hand over to, I won't say George, Josh. So you can talk about the work you're doing in the customer insight team.
Fantastic. Thanks, Craig. Yes, hello, my name's Josh. You can call me George, that's fine. So can I try something? And Craig, you started this. So again, hands up if you knew BSI before today. Great, so that's quite a few. So keep your hands up, if you knew BSI was something to do with standards. Okay, good. So keep them raised if you knew about any of the things Craig talked about at the start of this presentation, purpose-driven, no shareholders, profit for purpose. Yes, hello, BSI employees over there. There we go. That's what I expected. So, BSI is a fascinating organization. It's really interesting what we do day to day, but people don't know it. And if you looked at our website, you really wouldn't know it. So it's probably too small to see, but there's a bit of a snippet of our website. And it's basically our favorite standards numbers listed out for you to enjoy. So what I'm going to talk about for the next 10 minutes or so is a bit of a deep dive into this and solving this as a problem using data science. So the force for good here is clearly how can we get the word of BSI out more widely? How can we communicate that? But also it's around just working within an organization, within a business, how can we use data science to automate, to make things more efficient and more effective? So this is sort of the framework that we've used for the project, but taking a bit of a step back. So BSI, really understand that we need to revamp our website, we need to improve it. And that's a strategic project for the organization. But where I think this is a really good use case to explore is that, and I think this might be applicable to people in the room, have you ever wondered, if you could just have an open remit as a data science team, and you could partner with the business on a project and just bring things to the table and innovate and do things with data science, what would that look and feel like? And this has been fantastic because essentially this is what we've had within this project. We've had kind of an open remit. We've worked really closely with the business, and we've been able to kind of collaborate across different areas of the business. So this is how we structured it. So analyze, design, build, learn in a kind of a circular continuous improvement. That's how we're approaching our website build. So where do you start? So we know we need to improve our website, but what is our website? How do we even get a picture of what it is at the moment? And this is where we can bring in data science straight away. So the first step was analyzing our current website. So it turns out we have 42,000 pages on our website globally, and you can actually see them there. So that splodge is the 42,000 pages. The lines are the interconnections between those pages. So incredibly complex, I think it's fair to say. What we've been able to do with data science is to start to bring that data together on our web pages and start to augment that with additional data sources. So what's the performance of those web pages? How do they look on things like Google? How are they performing there? And bringing that all together, there's some quite stark stats that came off the back of this analysis. So 37% of our pages have very low engagement, which I think is nobody looks at them, I think is probably a better interpretation for that. And then a subset of those pages, so 16%, are what we're calling orphan pages. So these have you can't even access these pages, you can't get to them. And then if you flip that around in terms of what pages are people looking at, well, there's 10% of our pages are actually driving almost all of the traffic on our website. So this was really, really powerful. And you just couldn't do this in a manual way. So 42,000 pages, if you just spent 5 minutes looking at those pages and reviewing them, that would take you 500 working days or 2 years. But with data science, you can do this essentially in real time and explore the website as you need to. So moving on then from analyzing our website to starting to build a new website, what might data science be able to do in this space? So clearly, to build a new website, you need hundreds of new pages of content, and we're using specialists in the organization to do this. We're using third parties. No, we're not using ChatGPT. But you need to review that content because it needs to have a clear tone of voice. It has to have a consistent level of quality. So what the team's put together here is a tool that scans new content as it's created, and it assesses that content against a number of different tests that help to automate that first level of review. I think some of the really interesting things that have come through from this is, I don't know if you can see there, but the reading score. So on our current website, the reading score is in line with the difficulty in reading of the Harvard Law Review, which is potentially why nobody reads our content. Put that against the average reading age in the UK is 9 years old. So actually, to make our content accessible, there's actually a real need to make it simple. So a massive drive for simplification that this tool's helping to kind of power there. So finally, what's the so what? So we've made changes to the website. How do we then measure those changes? So if those people in the marketing background probably know that you have great tools like A/B testing available, where you literally will take one version of what you've built, build a new version in parallel, divert people across those two areas, and then you can measure the uplift. And that's a fantastic way of getting results. But it's not always practical. So if you have a big change that you're making alongside other changes in parallel, or perhaps there's loads of dependencies on that change and you can't do two things at the same time, it gets really, really difficult. And then you're left with this question of, we've made a change, but how do we know if that change has improved things, and how do we kind of put a number against it? So this is basically showing a change on the website, which is that red line there. And what we've done is we've used synthetic controls to essentially make a prediction of what we would expect to see on the website going forwards. And then we've compared that against actuals. So the specific example here was the main contact us page on the website. So a really important page for us to engage with our clients. And just by literally moving some of the different parts of that form, making it simpler, making it easier to fill out, we've seen an uplift of 25% just from that. So some really interesting stuff there. So I mean, that's essentially it. So a really kind of high-level view of a project, but it's been quite exciting to sort of be involved as a data science team within a wider project in the business. I think just to finish off, I think I wanted to highlight some learnings from that because it's been great, but it's also, taught us a lot as we've gone through the process. I think, first and foremost, simple is best. There's not a correlation between how technical something is and actually the impact it has on the business. Some of the things we've done that have been very, very easy have actually had a really big impact, and the opposite's been true, where we've done something really technical that we're proud of as a data science team, but actually people have not really cared in terms of the impact of what it's done there. And I think the only other item that's worth flagging is just stopping early. I think it's so easy to go down rabbit holes where something looks promising, you just chase after it again and again. It's sort of knowing when to stop, draw a line, and move on. But it's been an interesting project, which is, of course, still ongoing, so perhaps more to come there. But I will stop talking in the interest of time. It would be great to talk to you all downstairs after this event, and you've got some of the team here who have put this together, so please do engage. They'll be happy to answer all of your questions. But I will hand over to Andrea for the last section of the presentation.
Thank you, George. Oh,
That's going to stick with me.
So I feel I also need to do a raise your hand survey here. So raise your hand if in the past you designed an AI system of any sort. That's quite a lot of you. Great. So this is interesting, right? It's super cool. But raise your hands or keep your hands raised if you think you've given enough considerations about the bias that can assess your system, the discrimination that might happen when people use your AI systems. So this is one of the questions and topics that here at BSI we really have great attention onto. So we also want to focus on how AI systems impact people's life. And again, when you design your AI systems, my question is, have you given enough considerations about, any privacy concerns that might affect your system, any security concerns? So taking in mind these points, I want to give you a bit of an overview of the regulatory situation in terms of AI within the European Union. So you might have known about the forthcoming AI Act. So if you don't, so who knows what the AI Act is? Good, BSI employees, great. So basically, the AI Act is, put simply, the GDPR for artificial intelligence. So the European Union has been drafting the AI Act for some time now to put safeguards, to put requirements into law for how you should develop your AI systems if you want to put that AI system on the European market. So the current estimate for how the AI Act will be finalized is end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And when it will be finalized, manufacturers with AI systems on the European market will be given some time to make sure that their systems comply with the law, so with the AI Act. So we have that, on one hand, a European regulation. On the other hand, we have standards. So any of you know about specific standards being developed for AI? I guess not. OK, great. So there's many of them. Some of them are already published. So we have a standard that gives you guidelines for how to assess performances of machine learning models. We have a specific standard for bias, how to assess and understand whether your AI decision system is affected by any sort of bias. And we have, as a third example, a standard on assessing robustness for neural networks. More are to come. So, for example, we have a forthcoming standard on risk management for AI, standards about AI lifecycle. So on one hand, we have the AI Act, which will be a law. On the other hand, we have standards, and it's worth saying that standards are not mandatory. So manufacturers can decide to comply with standards to show that their product has certain quality. And basically, a way in which standards and regulation can interact is by this process called harmonization. So when a set of standards is harmonized with a corresponding regulations, that means that if you can prove that your product, your AI system complies with that set of standard, you have a good confidence that that product will also comply with the corresponding regulation. So maybe this seems a little bit boring or not necessary, so I want to show you some fictional examples of how and when things can go south. So I've put here like 3 examples of, for example, we have a system, computer vision system, which is meant to track a hockey puck during an ice hockey game. And the system is meant to track that hockey puck, but actually it's tracking somebody's baseball hat in the audience, which might seem funny, but that's not really what the system is meant to do. In the second example, we have Simon, and he's up to classify pictures of human beings and say whether or not they are blinking. As a matter of fact, it happens that when Simon uses that app by inputting pictures of people with only one eye, then the app always predicts that that person is blinking, which is not great at all. In the third example, we have Frank and a supposedly fun chatbot, which should give you fun answers when you input some text into it. And the thing is that sometimes that chatbot will insult you. So again, this is not something that you might want to receive as an output of your chatbot. And standards can really help you make sure that these situations don't happen. So as just a suggestion, for example, in the first example, maybe you might want to take a look at the standards on robustness for neural network. In the second example, we could consider the presence of bias in the system. Finally, in the third example, one option would be to look at how performances were assessed during the development of the machine learning model. So you see how things can go wrong, and I've told you why you should start thinking about bias, ethical aspects, privacy, and so on and so forth. And you might say, okay, well, but I don't want to put my product on the European market, so maybe who cares? Well, I mean, we heard about the G7 call on having regulations for artificial intelligence, and that means that awareness that AI needs to be regulated is not like a European thing, is a real global phenomenon. So here we have the forthcoming AI Act. I just wanted to mention some other efforts. For example, the Canadian AI Act, Canadian AI and Data Act, the National AI Strategy for the United Kingdom, the more complex context of the USA, where we have federal and state laws, where we have some local laws on risk management for AI system and automated decision systems. So probably these answers the question, is it really worth start thinking about bias, ethical aspects, privacy aspects, cybersecurity aspects of our models? And because basically there's no escape. And the idea is that you shouldn't address these concerns only for big projects, large-scale projects. It's actually kind of the opposite. And so you should start, even when you develop your own personal project using machine learning, you should really start thinking about, OK, how am I going to detect and address possible biases on my system? How can I make sure that my system is robust with respect to unforeseen circumstances? And the rationale behind having these kind of consideration well clear in your mind is that the sooner you start thinking about those, the easier it's going to be to scale them to large models, to complex systems where maybe you have multiple machine learning models interacting with each other. And at BSI, we believe that it is with these perspective that you can really make AI a true force for good. So that was my take on how BSI and AI are interacting right now. So we'd be thrilled to answer your questions at the booth. And yeah, that's us. And thank you.
Right. All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. And I do apologize for calling you George. I feel like I'm not going to live that one down now. Right, so after this, BSI are going to have a stand downstairs. You've heard this. We are going to break now for a little bit. There are teas and coffees downstairs. And then we'll come back at 3:15 for all the sessions in all the rooms. I do want to remind you, just before you go, we do have that LinkedIn competition that's going on. You've got 2 hours left to get involved in that. That is going to be announced at 5 p.m. at the end of the day when we meet here again at the end. So until then, see you at 3:15.